Live. And you are live.
All right, thank you. All right. Welcome. A quorum being present, this meeting of the Annapolis Historic Preservation Commission for 11 July 2022 shall come to order. The commission operates pursuant to the land use article of the annotated code of the state of Maryland. Local authority is derived from the municipal code of the city of Annapolis, chapter 21, section 56. The purpose of the HPC is to preserve sites, structures, districts, and that are historically, culturally, archaeologically, and architecturally significant. Requirements for serving on the commission are detailed in chapter 21, section 806. The HPC operates under the State of Maryland Open Meetings Act, and therefore no pending application shall be discussed among commissioners outside the public hearing to determine the disposition of any application. Okay, so that's number one on the agenda. Number two on the agenda is roll call. Bill Williams.
Here.
Yale present. Kim Finch.
Working the mic's off.
I haven't seen Kim yet. Bobby Collins, who serves as vice chair.
Here.
Will Scott. Okay, I heard him on my phone. He unmuted himself on my phone and said here. Leslie Zazier.
Here.
Kevin Smith.
Here.
I am Tim Leahy. I serve as chair. John Tower, his staff.
Present.
And I am looking for, I don't see a representative of the Office of Law right now. And Jackie Rouse is here from the Office of Planning and Zoning. Thank you for joining us. And Kim Consoli is our recorder, who is doing a great job on the minutes. Just shout out to you, Kim. All right. Any announcements?
So, Tim, I have a question. Have you been contacted by the new legal representatives?
I have not. That
Okay.
could be an announcement. Thanks for bringing it up, Jackie.
Okay.
We have been served by Cheryl Woods for the last several years, who did a great job, but I have not been contacted. So that will prompt me to contact the Office of Law and say, I'd like to meet the new person. So is that what you're?
That's,
If you-
yes, that's why I was asking if you had any, if they had called
Not
you
yet.
or contacted
Not
you
yet.
yet. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. John, announcements, we usually turn over to staff to.
Well, I had been asked in the past about 10 Pinckney Street. And
That's is that violations?
it's not a violation per se. It's not a violation.
Announcements
yet.
are what the hell is going on in our.
What the hell is going on? Well, then let me make some announcements.
There you go.
There are many applications for parklets pending, including one that I looked at today for Chicken Roosts. It's a wonderful time to work with the applicants to bring their furniture and fixtures into compliance. And if I think it is a bit of a surprise to some that the rules for the emergency pandemic order are not still in place, that there are a whole new set of guidelines. However, I'm working with the different ones, and it's to an extent, I would say, similar to working with a group of teenagers who are trying to tell you that they're sleeping at their friend's house, but they're going to sneak out. So anyway, I'm working on it.
All right. The only announcement I might have is that I'm headed out tomorrow to Cincinnati to go to the conference, NAPC conference, and looking forward to connecting with preservation commissions around the country. And we're considered, actually, when I introduce myself in these meetings, they really have a lot of respect for us. So we led, we stand on the shoulders of our previous commissions, and people like to talk to us. So I'm looking forward to it on a few issues, including energy conservation, sea level rise, guidelines in general. And so I'm looking forward to it. So I'll report back.
Well, have fun, Tim.
Yeah.
It'll be
And
interesting.
hopefully there's some topic of outdoor dining that we can take advantage of too.
You know, it's not you know, it's very interesting that there isn't, you know, I'll actually, Kevin, that's a great point. There might be some free flowing kind of open meeting kind of thing, and that would be a very interesting concept, but none of them have, that I see, addressed that. In fact, well, I'll take that offline, because not a lot of them seem to address the impact of the pandemic on our outdoor environment. Although we all feel it, they all know it, but it doesn't seem to be a breakout session. Good input, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is approval of draft minutes from June 14th. Can I have a motion for approval?
I move that we approve the draft minutes for June 14th, 2022.
And a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Oh, that's all right. Minutes are approved. Next on the agenda is new violations, or status of active violations. John, can you give us an update?
I am working with all violators to help them right their wrongs.
Right.
And actually, that's
specifically.
that is true. That is true.
I know.
And I spent a considerable amount of time yesterday with someone from Pinckney Street, a sometime resident and then a full-time resident. And we were talking about the front porch violation that she is working to mitigate.
Is this the one to the east of Historic Annapolis headquarters?
No, and that leads me into number 10 Pinckney Street. And number 10 Pinckney Street is going to be approached from a licensing and let's say a rental inspection standpoint to begin with. That's how there are different ways to
Is it a rental
do it.
property?
It is a rental property, and it's also I would say at this point demolition by neglect. But demolition by neglect is a pretty strong shot across the bow. So I want to see what we can do to approach the owner and start the conversation. And so that's how that conversation is beginning.
But the conversation has begun when
No, I haven't spoken. I haven't spoken yet. I'm sure there's going to be some lag between the issuance of violations and her speaking, the owner, or at least if it's the same person I spoke to last time, and that person speaking to me. But anything that we can do to make the house safer and to improve its appearance is going to be good for the street.
Mhm. So that'll be on the agenda for our next meeting then, is that particular house.
Well, it's
It's
always
been
going
raised
to
by,
be.
it's been raised by a neighbor, so.
Right, right. It's going to be until it's corrected.
Okay. All right. Other violations that you'd like to notify, any new?
Minor things, you know, people working without approvals or permits. Nothing that made me drop my countenance and go, oh
Okay.
no.
All right. Other commissioners, any comments you'd like to make about anything in the district that you'd like to? All right, seeing no motion in the chamber. The consent docket is next. On the agenda. The consent docket is a procedure designed to expedite applications. In order to be considered, the application must have received recommendation for approval or a minor approval with minor conditions. There needs to be no public opposition to the application. If you are on the consent docket, you need to understand that you still need to obtain the necessary permits from the city. The following application is on the consent docket for 113, 115 Cathedral Street. Is there so the way this is going to work, I think most of you have been here before, but the consent docket is, you just need to agree to the conditions in the staff report and have read those conditions. So is there a representative for 113, 115 Cathedral Street present? And please promote them.
This is Bob Ruby. I'm the landscape architect who prepared this for the property owner. So I'm happy to.
Okay. Have you read the conditions on the staff report?
I have.
All right. And do you agree to them?
I believe that I agree with them. There's some recommendations that I'm not sure whether they're just recommendations or things that we absolutely have to do.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
There's a recommendation for the drainage to dump into the property, which is preferred.
Yeah.
But I think when we read those, when that's a recommendation, the other three items are actual conditions. The first three.
Right, and that makes sense.
Okay. Do you agree to those? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Then I'll take a motion to accept one. And by the way, there was no public testimony against this application, which is also a condition of the consent document. So I'll take a motion then.
Do you want me to still read the conditions, Tim, since they've been agreed to? Put them in the record?
Yes, I would do that, Bobby.
Okay. I move that we accept the application for 113, 115 Cathedral Street because it is consistent with guidelines C1, C2, and B13 in the Secretary of the Interior Standards number 3. It has the following conditions. Number 1, that Mr. Manassa's requirement for striping parking spaces will be implemented if a van accessible parking space is needed. Number 2, that the deed be modified to reflect the proposed modification to the site per Jackie Rouse's requirement. However, this condition can be waived by the Office of Law. Number 3, that the applicant coordinate with the city's archaeological consultant, Applied Archaeology and History Associates for excavation. As per the recommendation of Jackie and Jennifer Feth, it is strongly suggested that the drainage be terminated in the yard. And obviously we just had a conversation about that, so.
All right. So the last item for the commissioners is somewhat not a condition, it's a suggestion.
Right.
Okay. All in favor?
Wait, we need a second.
Nope, sorry. Thank you.
Someone?
I'll second.
All right,
You
all
got
in
it.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All abstain? All right. So that application is approved. All right. I'll just make a comment that when we make a condition and the Office of Law is involved, that we do have a precedent that the Office of Law will get involved after the fact when that may occur in this, but it's not a major issue. But just to let you all know, we have conditional conditions, I guess. So, all right, thank you, Bob, for joining us. And
Thank you.
all right,
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
all right. Next on the agenda is other business. We have two pre-apps tonight. The first is Ogle Hall. So, Jody, I'm not sure who is here, but please promote them.
Jay Schwartz is here.
Hi, Jay.
Oh, thanks all. Thanks so much. I don't know why. The pictures, let's see. It's a good picture of that. There we go.
Hey there.
A little better.
Hey there. This is a pre-application for 247 King Street, Ogle Hall. And any comments, so you understand, any comments made by the HPC members at this meeting should not be interpreted as an approval. Absence of comment doesn't indicate acceptance. It's merely a accommodation to the applicant for a design review.
We appreciate it.
Do you understand? Okay, thank you. So what would you like us to know? We have some documents in front of us, I think two, which is photographs of the site, and then I think a site plan. Do you have anything else to present?
I do. So Phil Dales was supposed to join us, and he has a Ward 1 Resident Association meeting at the same time. He may join us late. I apologize, but it's an introductory really to this project. I can share my screen if I may.
Of course.
Let's see. I'm a little slow at this. I'll get there. Advanced. Portion of screen share.
Here we go.
This is actually two addresses, 49 College Avenue and Ogle Hall, which is 247 King George Street, both owned by the by nonprofit U.S. Navy Alumni Association. The Alumni Association is building a new headquarters across the College Creek on the left, probably a year out from occupancy. I don't know that. I'm not part of that anymore. There's a new buyer, Navy graduates, FWC Investments, Fairwinds Capital Investments. They have purchased the properties and they are going to turn them into like an event hall and then an inn. And an inn under the zoning regulations can only have X number of rooms. I think it's 15. I don't remember that. The project must go through a special exception process. It's been preliminarily or in a early stage presented, I believe, to Tom Smith, maybe Jackie, but it has to go through that process. We just wanted you to know what was going on with the property. On your screen, 49 College Avenue is a long, thin block, and Ogle Hall is a historic property, and it's a pretty large property. You can see on the parcel map how they lay out. Let's see, next page. The idea here is Ogle is in blue with a carriage house. There's a large courtyard in the back. College Avenue has parking that fronts on 49 College Avenue has parking that fronts on College Avenue. It's head-in parking, and then they have a pretty fair backyard that's partly paved. The idea is there'll be interior renovations for rooms and bathrooms. No exterior renovations are proposed or anticipated at this point. The only exterior renovation possibly may be an ADA ramp to get to the first floor. And we could do that on the side or back. There's already an elevator in Ogle Hall, and we've made the case that we do not need an elevator in 49 College because of the size of the building. I think we all, if we're all townies, have
We
seen,
pretty much recognize all this.
recognize it. So it's pretty, it's a lovely lot. We're going to park the entire, no, we're not going to put any parking on it. That was a little joke. And there's a very lovely sort of
Will is not listening at this point.
courtyard, had a heart attack. And then there's a big
No,
courtyard.
I mean, Bill is not listening at this
Yeah,
point.
Bill's
He's
not
recused himself.
There'll be, the two properties will probably house two uses. And the idea is, if I can blow this up, let's see. And the idea is to maintain the existing courtyard in the back, sort of an event space, and to separate the properties with landscape elements and maybe different pavings, but basically landscape elements. And then eventually there'll be exterior furniture. So we anticipate that our proposal to you will be primarily any change in the paving, as well as furniture and landscaping. And that's really the proposal. Again, it's early in the process. There's no anticipated exterior changes to either of the properties. We've done our preliminary work to look at bathrooms and mechanical and ADA. We think they're both in pretty good shape. So if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. That's sort of my presentation.
Commissioners, questions? Well, as you presented it, our focus will be on the landscape aspects. So guidelines C1 through C10, any kind of outdoor lighting will be important. So that'll all need to be detailed. Jay, do you think that compliance to obtain all the ventilation? Are there going to be additional roof penetrations?
If there are any, there'll be additional units. There'll be probably splits. And they'll put in the back. They'll put it in the back of the buildings. There will be some mini splits in some of the rooms which do not have roof penetrations. So we really think it's nothing on. We don't see anything on the roofs. Maybe in the back of the properties where we already have existing units, we may have to upgrade the unit sizes. If we put 12 rooms in one building, at least half the rooms will have mini splits, which do not have an outside air requirement or a through wall requirement. So we really think it'll be a minimum intrusion into our district.
Does anyone here on the commission have experience with splits on exterior of buildings?
Yeah, I'm confused by that statement that there'd be no exterior impact with a mini split unit. Like, there's definitely going to be an outside compressor unit, which is fine. We can do it, but like, to say that there's no impact there would be inaccurate.
And ductwork on the exterior as well.
Even if it's piping, but it would still be impact.
All right. Well, I stand corrected.
Yeah. Anytime we see many split units, there's always a new unit, and it looks like a downspout, but it's definitely a thing.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jack.
So just a question to clarify, because I believe there were some emails about this last week, and Mr. Dales, I think that John and I had wondered why it was coming to HPC if there were no exterior changes proposed. And Mr. Dale said that there are modifications to the exterior proposed, and it was shown on the plans.
Yeah, well, it needs to come to us for the courtyard. The
Right.
landscape aspect is
Courtyard,
clearly going to come to us.
So is that what
regardless.
is that what he was referring to?
Yes, Jackie, that was it.
Okay, because.
And it was also as an introduction
Right.
that the commission knew this was coming down the road.
We
This is
had
like
just, I think, looked
courtesy.
at the plans and had a little bit of trouble figuring out exactly what the changes were that were shown on the plans.
There are no changes shown yet. There are no
Okay.
changes.
Oh, that would explain it. Okay.
And if I may, the existing for Ogle Hall, the existing outside units, which are right here.
Clustered there.
And would like to probably move them. You know, they're clustered, they're behind landscape elements now, but it's three good sized units existing. And I don't know, I mean, I'd like to get them out of that street side yard, and that's just, we'll see what we can do with that.
Yeah, and that would be another thing that would be in your application final. So there are, again, we're talking about exterior changes.
Yes.
So movement of HVAC, and then we'll learn more about split unit. That's on the main building. On the carriage house, are you anticipating, again, we're gonna have to almost break this into three applications, or three. On the carriage house, are you also anticipating split units for AC?
We don't know right now if the existing systems are large enough. We haven't sized it. It's still preliminary proposal. I mean, the
And-
carriage house already has split system on the ground, the condenser on the ground, and we think it's large enough, but we haven't done the full sizing yet.
Okay, and of course, I'll be very obvious, like, oh, and then 49 College Avenue, we'll need to. So this will probably, same questions. Do you intend to make this application as one application for all three buildings and this as one?
I don't know that yet, Tim. Mr. Leahy,
Okay.
I don't know that yet. It depends on how much goes into each building. I mean, they're two separate properties, so they probably need to come in as two proposals. It's my guess.
Does anyone on the commission have a thought about splitting or making this one or two?
Two.
Yeah, two just tends to work better with making sure something on one doesn't hold up the other for you.
Yep, great, thank you.
That's actually a really good point. They're two very different properties, and 49 College Avenue is from a whole different era and has a lot different significance. Ogle Hall has one of the 4 or 5 most important significances of any building in Annapolis.
Yeah.
So
We agree. College Avenue is sort of a rat's warren right now. It's got like an apartment.
interior, on the interior.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mess.
Yeah. It looks like you're proposing like a pools or something. So what we can see on this is the courtyard on the back of Ogle Hall has like a plaza for social events, right?
Correct.
Maybe tented for events. And College Avenue seems to have 2 pools in the back.
These are actually sheds.
They're
These are storage
sheds, yeah.
sheds.
Oh,
Existing
okay.
Storage sheds.
All right. Are they of any significance?
No.
Yeah, probably 1994 Home Depot kind of significance.
They were put in 2005.
You know,
Yeah. Bobby knows this. So what we see here on 49 College Avenue so far is not a whole lot of concept of what you're going to do there, but it looks like the courtyard behind Ogle Hall does have some thought. It's going to be paved. It's not paved now, right?
It is paved now.
It's brick.
So-
It's brick.
So what
What's-
we're looking at right now then is current conditions.
Yes, sir.
All right. So we
That's
have right now we don't know anything new.
Yeah, we have not proposed anything new yet.
Okay, just
Here's the courtyard.
okay. So this you're just getting us acquainted right now with the
Correct.
current conditions.
This is the rear of Ogle.
Oh, nice. All right, thanks. I didn't realize it was all paved.
Yeah, it's all paved now.
All right, well, you're gonna, so in your next pre-application, we're gonna be curious about changes to the landscape. That's a beautiful pin oak, it looks like.
He's a willow. Oh,
It's a pin, okay.
Where's
So,
Bob Ruby? Where's Bob Ruby?
so you're gonna need to be looking at all of those things on your next
Yes,
presentation.
we will.
All right, anything else you'd like to tell us?
Thanks so much. No, thanks for your evening.
Mr. Chairman, we're so sorry for being delayed here. Very, very sorry. Phil Dale's here with the applicant. This is Vadim Ray here with me, who's part of the Fairwinds Group. We were presenting to WARA and my car was blocked into the 49 West parking lot by literally in a way that could not be removed until I found somebody to get me out of here. I'm very, very sorry to have been late.
It's okay. Well, we were kind of wrapping up here, Phil. Well, I'll summarize for you. What we've seen is a current conditions understanding of what's going on. The focus of any changes will be on the exterior. Any kind of exterior changes will be important. The only topic that garnered some discussion was HVAC on the exterior, and any kind of split systems. We believe in other applications like this result in exterior changes, including units on the exterior and ductwork on the exterior that look like downspouts, but still, that's what the nature of split systems. So those were the nature of our discussion. We understand that this is just the first presentation to us, and we'll look forward to new ones.
That sounds good. Thank you very much. I could add something briefly on what's relevant to this commission about the proposed use, unless that's already been discussed, and I don't want to.
We actually have no proposed use. Is not actually something that we discuss.
No, I understand. So what I think is relevant about our proposed use, though, is that we are looking to create an exterior change that'll not be to the structures, but we were going to do a separation of our two proposed uses, and that is going to be an exterior change, and it's right on in line with what you've been mentioning, Mr. Leahy, in that it will be to the sort of the area behind Ogle Hall, and the function of this exterior change would just be landscaping or maybe a hardscaping flat element, using the kind of materials that you're looking at with the current conditions to create a separation between the in uses, which will be located in the carriage house and 49 West ground floors and upper floors, and the social organization use you see labeled on the site that's got that shading. And that use will be occurring on the first floor of Ogle Hall, but not the upper floors. And so we're going to create some sort of a separation using what we hope will be context appropriate materials between those uses, just running along the courtyard and then behind the in uses to keep the social organization use separate from the in uses of those other buildings.
Are you talking about a wall?
We're not talking about a wall, unless you pushed us to.
Well, no, that's what I heard you say. So I don't know what you're saying. Where, and so it's an exterior feature that you're going to add.
Correct. So, and we're thinking landscaping rather than a wall.
Well, then it's part of it.
And then potentially a changing to pavers to just indicate visually where the uses should be separated. Jay, maybe you could talk a little bit about.
And is there any change in level, or is it just flat?
No, we've already sort of reviewed it, Phil. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah. If it's landscaping, you just need to give us the details. And also, Phil, for your information, we understand that this probably will be two separate applications because the buildings have two very different periods of significance, and we'll be reviewing them separately.
So when we come back to you with our final applications, you're wanting us to do that as two separate applications to this board, to this commission?
It was indicated to us that was your intent.
Okay.
And it can come at the same time. It can come at the same time.
Yep, that works great. And we're just going to Board of Appeals for a special exception on the in-use, and we'll have to come here for any improvements associated with that at the end of that process. So I think that works just fine.
And just remember, any change in use needs to occur before you come to us.
That's right. Understood.
All of the other applications need to be complete.
Yep. Understood. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Tim, can I ask a simple question?
Sure.
What's a social organization?
Yeah, I've never heard that term either.
That is the term from the use tables. That is the use consistent with the current organization, which is the Alumni Association use, and the events.
Oh, social organization, meaning like a fraternal organization or.
Yeah, they're different uses in the use tables, but the social organization use is what we're, and that one doesn't require a special exception. It's the in use that in this zone requires special exception.
So the zoning calls it social organization, like a fraternal organization or something.
Right, and it'll be separate entities running the social organization use and the in use.
And you're eventually going to have to change that to whatever in.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Yeah, good question, Captain.
Thanks,
I thought it meant party space.
No, that's just the zoning term.
Understood.
I mean, I think it can, right? Like, I mean, an Elks Lodge could be rented for a wedding reception, right? I mean,
Bingo. Yeah, that's exactly what.
Yeah, there are different. So there's clubs, social organizations, fraternal organizations. They're all different terms in the use tables, and have different definitions and requirements. It's just this is the one that's appropriate to the use and permitted in this zone as a special exception, as a permitted use.
I'm gonna have to read that glossary then.
Yeah. Let's have a conversation tonight about changing the zoning laws. About these. All right. Have we provided you with the input that you needed as on the pre-app? And we would welcome a new one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We just wanted to let you know our intent and get some sort of direction on what you'd want to see from us for the final app when we come back.
Well, so far in summary, and commissioners, correct me if I'm wrong, it has to do with the landscape materials and all the guidelines from C1 to C10, and also if there's any exterior use of changes of the HVAC, particularly ducting.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, that'll be the summary. All right, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Next on the agenda is 88 State Circle. Will, can you hear us now? Are you good?
I am. I've recovered my PC.
So I'll take you off my phone.
Yep.
I'm amazed we didn't have some kind of weird feedback and all of we've lucked out. We're getting better every 2 or 3 years. Okay, as I said, next on the agenda is 88 State Circle. And so Jody, please promote. Who do we have?
Here is Jackson, John, and Nate. They're in the meeting.
Hello, Nate, Jackson, and John. Welcome. We understand your we've seen your proposal. Thank you, or your presentation to us. I just need you to acknowledge the fact that this is a pre-application, and it's not to be interpreted as approval of the project. Any absence of comment is not also indicated as acceptance. It's an accommodation to the applicant, so we can give you feedback on your design. Please acknowledge. I see a head nod. Oh, good.
Yes.
All right, thanks. Tell us what you'd like to know, and if you don't mind, I will guide you a little bit. 111 pages for a pre-application is not what we're used to. So I will say that the commissioners weren't expected to read all of them, but your application itself, the original page of the application does, let me just go to it, talks about, number one, exterior renovation, about the concrete driveway, number one, the south elevation with a door and aspects, east elevation, and then east light fixtures. So if you would help us in your guide us to those aspects. And also, I understand that you have been working with John Tower and have had back and forth. So that's very positive, and please continue to do that. There's one thing I didn't see in the little summary of your description of work that had to do with HVAC vents and HVAC. I don't see that in your little description of work in the beginning of the application. So if you could walk us through the driveway changes, the door and window changes, and then talk about HVAC units and any kind of roof penetration things that would help us, because it's at about page 33 in the application before we see things that we as the HBC look at. And thanks for the detail. But if you understand what I'm saying, we need to start in a pre-application as an overview and then drill down.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense? That was a little wordy, but.
Tim, may I add one thing of concern to your list?
Sure.
First, I need to ask John a point for clarification, if you don't mind. I don't want to, I'm not asking.
Do you mean this John or John?
Your John,
Baltimore?
you.
Okay.
Mr.
Okay.
Tower.
Mhm.
There is a block on each side of the duplex that looks like a shoebox. You know what I mean? It's closest to the street on the North Street side.
Okay,
Is that part of the original structure?
it is not.
Okay, then, thank you, John. Let me just ask one question of the applicant. Have you considered removing those more recent additions?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, the modifications to the exterior are intended to be as minimal as possible, only to accommodate those changes which were necessary on the interior. And so we don't have any intention of modifying the landscaping or this addition, which I'm not quite recalling off the top of my head the location of it, but that is not within the scope of this project.
Are you referring to the 1940s edition that's?
I am.
Yeah, we didn't have any intention of demolishing that or replacing it. We were actually intending to put a wheelchair lift inside of it that would make us ADA compliant so that somebody who's disabled could access it and get to the actual first floor from the basement.
Okay, I have one more question of Mr. Tower, and I promise I will ask no more. John, are those additions from the 1940s equally protected by the ordinance as the rest of the building?
Well, not exactly, but I think we're going to be splitting hairs if we discuss it here. So.
Oh, yeah,
they
no,
could-
I don't want to
they
discuss
could-
it. I just
Right.
want to know the answers to these questions as I hear the response.
Well, the period of significance is pre-1942.
1942.
And those additions may have taken on significance of their own.
I agree with that, but they're still ugly.
That's
all
a
I have to
value
say.
judgment.
That's all I have to say right now, I promise.
They serve a purpose, and I think the city of Baltimore is planning to put them to good use.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
just to help the commissioners, this is an extremely important building. As you all know, it's a duplex, and this is the left or right, John? Is it the right? It is the right.
It's the eastern half of the building.
Correct. Towards Randall Court,
Yes, it borders Randall Court.
just for everyone's orientation.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim.
All right. So, okay, go ahead, guys.
Okay, if I could, I'm going to share my screen so I can walk you guys through this project.
And while Nate's doing that, just to introduce ourselves,
Oh,
Jack.
yes, thank you. I'm sorry. How impolite. Please introduce.
No,
yourself.
it's fine. I'm the Historic Preservation Officer for the Department of General Services for Baltimore City, not to be confused with State DGS. And I'm joined by my coworker, John Southern, and Nate McNeil is our consultant from Mans Woodward Architects, who is the project manager who has worked on the design. So I will let Nate go through the fine points and highlight those specific items that you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, and then we will be happy to answer questions.
Thanks. Again, I apologize for not letting you introduce yourself. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so
There it is.
this is it. This project has two main goals. The first goal is to provide ADA access to the first floor. Now, the way that we intend to do that is to provide a new lift on the interior of the basement level. So this plan here, this is the basement level plan. You see in the corner here, we have this wheelchair lift that will allow a person with a wheelchair to come down the concrete driveway, in through this basement doorway, down this interior ramp, because this is a depression here, 4 inches lower, onto this lift, which would carry them up to the first floor, which has the new ADA accessible bathroom. So that is one of the main goals of this project. Now, because, or as a result of this goal, there are a couple exterior modifications that we had to make. The first modification is regarding the drive aisle, the driveway. This driveway is not sized wide enough to fit both a vehicle and allow for wheelchair access alongside. So this driveway does have to get increased in width by about 1.5 feet, I believe 2 feet, to allow space for a car and a wheelchair to pass. It gives us about 6 inches of gravel before we encounter that existing fence line. That fence is to not be disturbed. So that is the first kind of.
Quick question, is that fence on your property? And
I believe not. I believe it is not.
All right, so that fence is on the adjacent property, and so you won't be disturbing that fence.
Correct.
All right, thanks.
Another result of this goal on the exterior have to do with the doors. So this, allow me to find a better photo. This is the basement entry door. This door, the sill of this door is actually not ADA compliant. This door will require a new ADA compliant threshold. The swing on this door will also need to be reversed, and we're also going to need to update the door hardware itself. But the goal is to reuse this existing panel, make modifications to the frame and the sill to provide that ADA access. We're also going to be replacing this gutter here. This downspout will be removed.
It looks perfectly fine.
Yeah, no, it's great for it sheds water, right off onto the entryway. But that'll be replaced in kind with a pre-finished gutter.
If you don't mind if I interrupt, I see two doors. You're just talking about a door on the right.
Yes, this door is to remain it's going to be left alone.
Is it actually a window? I don't remember the plan, but
it is a door. Yeah, currently this is an entry into one space, and this is an entry into a secondary space. There's a wall that divides them here.
Understood.
Okay, another reaction to this goal is going to be the exterior door in the rear. So if I could find that image really quick. This door here. So this is a double panel door, but because our lift is so wide, we're actually encroaching onto this opening here. So the idea is to take this door out, reduce the width of this opening so that the lift can fit, and then replace this opening with just one of these panels, again, reversing the swing and making modifications to the frame to allow for accessibility. And that is as a result of the first goal. The second goal of this project is to upgrade the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, which really the only exterior changes that we're looking to make as it relates to that is we have a split system in which we are locating the exterior units on pads right in the back here, which you'll see in this image where the existing units are located. We'll be taking these out and the new units will be in their place. And then we will have a series of exterior louvers, just as we've identified here with this 5 and this rectangle. at each level for our fresh air intake for each unit that serves each floor. So again, this is in the rear of the building. This is our backyard here. Those louvers are, if you can see my mouse, in this corner, this inside corner.
All on the interior. I mean, just the louvers, the only on the exterior.
Correct.
You heard our discussion earlier about, may have heard our discussion about ductwork on the exterior of buildings. I think it's not.
Correct.
It's a discussion item.
Other exterior modifications that we are making, we are going to be replacing the rear fence with, we're going to restore it back to its original design. And we have a detail of that on this sheet. It's all going to be stained cedar, 1x8 posts with, or sorry, 6x6 posts with 1x8 vertical boards, and will replicate the cap and fascia just as it is now.
And Nate, if I may add too, it might be worth noting that the impetus to replace that fence was actually a request which came from the adjacent property owner, the neighbor behind the building, behind our property. He felt that it was in very poor condition and desired that it be replaced with one that was not collapsing. And we agreed, and so we're doing that sort of to be good neighbors to the adjacent property owner.
I'd encourage you to have them provide testimony when you provide your final application.
Absolutely.
And I understand that. It makes sense.
A few other exterior modifications. We are required to sprinkler this building. So as a result, we will be required to install a new FDC connection at the front corner where the incoming water is. So there will be a fire department connection here with a sign that indicates its location. And finally, we will be replacing the three of the lower level exterior light fixtures. If you can see in this photo, we have two that are at this side entry here. And then there's one on that frame of that door that we are looking to modify. I have cut sheets as well that I can show you. The other fixture we're looking to replace is the one up here by the front door. These fixtures will all be LED, but their style and nature is is visually just very similar to what's here. You might see that we were having some work indicated for the exterior windows. We have decided to separate that work out of this project. We're going to be looking at including that scope of work in a separate project in the future. So for this application, any work associated with the exterior windows will be removed.
Okay, so we're focusing just on basically the ground floor, at this point.
Yes.
Okay.
And if I could, I'll just share this is the fixture we're looking to replace the front fixture with. And the lower fixtures will be this, but in a bronze finish.
Okay.
And that's all I had. Jackson, did you have anything else to add?
No, we appreciate the commission's feedback. In regard to the length of this submission, I do apologize. I think we had intended to submit this review earlier in the design process, but in working with John Tower, we made modifications along such a timeline that the design was already advanced to this point, at the point at which we requested to be included in the agenda for this hearing. So we hope it wasn't too much, but we certainly appreciate your feedback so that we can make any adjustments as necessary prior to submitting for the full permit.
Thanks. I understand that. I think we all understand that. This is a project that seems to have a lot of small modifications, but in the sum, there's a lot going on, and hits an awful lot of our particular things that we need to look at. So given what you've shown us tonight, it'd be helpful in your final presentation, it would just simplify it back to what you did tonight, basically. In your final application, just simplify it back a little bit.
Okay.
And so it includes a lot. So other commissioners or John, do you have any comments or thoughts at this point? And then,
well, I'm glad to hear that the door on the front is going to be reused. And I worked with Nate and asked for the vent on the front of the building to be moved, and that was moved to the back. It's been a lot of good response. I need to look at the details for the porch, the rear porch infill, but the exterior scope has actually been reduced for this presentation from where it was, I guess. Hey, when did you come in with the plans? Was it 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks? Right, it's actually been reduced, and I think you've made some good decisions.
Yes.
Tim?
So, Tim, I did have a question.
go ahead, Jackie.
So have you all met with the adjacent property owners? The reason I ask is because several of the adjacent property owners have already scheduled a meeting, and we have met with them concerning the renovations to the other half of this building, and expressed concerns about some of the things that were being proposed with that renovation.
I'd just like to say, Jackie, that we're looking at this applicant, and I would encourage, of course, them to be
Right.
but they're two different applications. So
I just want to make sure that they'd also reach out to the neighbors.
I think it's a good idea, but as far as our
Just a
this is a
suggestion.
pre-app, but still, as far as
Right.
our deliberations have to do, Will has his hand up.
Thank you, Tim. First, I'd like to thank the applicant team for coming forward and hear the good things that John had to say. This is a terribly important building, in my opinion, one of my favorites in the whole city. And not all government entities show the same concern and respect that you have. So I thank you for that. And I really, based on what they proposed, see no reason to not consider this a feasible application.
Feasible. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm
I
sorry.
may.
Somebody have their hand?
Bill?
Yeah, Will.
Bill,
Bill, sorry. I'm looking at I'm scrolling across here. Yes,
I'm up here.
Bill.
Where? I do have a question about the rear elevation. You were talking about the elevator protruding into the, I'm going to call it the left leaf, or actually we'll call it the inactive leaf. Looking at your plan, you have a box out there. Why can you not just put the door you want to remove in place as a fixed panel and just leave a small area behind it, so we still get that appearance of both pieces there? Also, I have a question on how does that affect the glazing above, because the glazing's in that same line of that panel you want to remove as well. Does that make sense on the second floor?
It does.
If you come into the second floor there.
I would say, see this, so this image right here really tells it kind of all.
If you see in this image, the left jamb of the door comes in right up in line with the window above.
Right, yes, just like.
So if you're having to remove this, are you removing that up there? And I don't see why we can't have a false door panel here with the glass and just a wall close behind it, which looks like what you're doing above if I read the plan correctly. So we maintain that consistency and the original elevation.
So
Am I seeing something wrong here?
just so I understand, let me draw if I can.
And is your goal here, Bill, to preserve as much of?
To preserve as much of the original imagery as possible, even if it's just the full width. If the second leaf, in order to get the first leaf to meet ADA, if the second leaf has to be narrower, at least it would still maintain the same jam line from first floor right through second floor, which it currently has.
So what you're suggesting is to really just build a kind of an infill panel.
A small panel behind it.
Inside this door,
With
leave this
glass.
exterior.
So we still have, I mean, it could be a fake door, but I want to go back. If you look at the second floor of the proposed.
In plan or in the elevation?
In plan. You see the 3 windows you have marked as 11?
Yes.
The jamb to the right in this image is in line with the door jamb below. You've maintained that window there. Why can we not maintain the one below the same way?
So for this system, we're not required, it does not require us to have the wall in line with this door, because on this floor, this is actually getting this glass rail only extends up to about 42 inches.
Okay, so this is not an elevator, it's a lift.
Correct. Yes, it is a lift. So down on the basement level, where it does extend from basement to first floor, this wall is really important to conceal really all of the innards of the floor assembly and the wall assembly beyond. This is to really conceal it. And this door that we're actually showing here is actually a wood door. This is not related to this system.
So this is on the exterior. This, Bill, your point is on the exterior, as all of this is expressed, that you should.
The jamb, I feel, should still be
lined up with the window above.
Even if it turns out just to be a false panel, so we maintain that alignment in the architecture. Because right
so it
now
doesn't have an adverse. We're trying not to have an adverse impact on that window above. Is that what you're saying? Because we're kind of getting in a little bit of. I'm sorry to say
no.
Commissioners, we're getting into.
I'm looking at the architectural design.
I just need to know where you're coming from.
I know it's a rear elevation, but it was architecturally designed for these 2 elements to align.
You're talking about the bays lining up.
Correct, top to bottom.
Lining up.
Yes, and that left jamb aligning. If I heard correctly, you plan on putting brick in there, so now we have a dog leg in what was a uniform design from top to bottom in alignment. I know I'm being a little picayune, and this is a rear, but it's still an entrance.
It's not that it's a rear, it's just that we need to express what your concept. I'm trying to put words in your mouth.
My concept is
the exterior alignment of this facade should be maintained or not have an adverse impact. So
not have an adverse impact.
We're trying not to have an adverse impact on
expressed as an element.
Yes, we don't want to go into the interior.
No, well, the interior I was looking at just because it would be a way of maintaining the glazing if possible. That's not possible given the type of system they're using, so that goes away. But even if they want to put brick in there, at least pocket it some as we would if we were infilling an existing door or an existing window in a wall.
So if we summarize, rethink this a little bit to try and not have an adverse impact on the existing second floor fenestration.
Yeah.
Something like that?
Something to that effect, yes.
Rethink this a little bit. All right.
I mean, are you putting brick? Are you planning to make that a brick infill?
Yes, I can actually show you this is the.
Okay.
This
there
would be.
You see.
So it's actually, there we go. What page is that?
This is A100, which
A103, Bill thinks you should rethink this design a little bit.
I mean, I
Somebody
look at
say.
it as if that left line where you have
Yeah,
tooth
work on
in
that one a little bit. Okay.
should not be toothed. Simplest. Just make that alignment. I don't know, recess. I'm just throwing ideas, recess or make it a different material, something that says these two work together.
Yeah.
And okay, I didn't see it in the image. Interesting. I didn't notice that the doors did not align to the right one. I thought there was an alignment there too in the photo.
I think it might.
Oh, it's because
If I draw the hinge of this door here, it is a little bit off, but it could be the perspective.
By the way, thank you for
perspective and the fact that the door is open. That's throwing me.
By the way, thank you for all the lines you can draw for us. This is fantastic. All right.
So we can look at some options there.
I think these are good suggestions. It may also be worth noting too that this is part of that 1940s edition that we were discussing earlier.
Yes.
It's still older than me, which is saying something, so it must be historic.
I'm not saying that to discount significance, only
yeah, we
as a
understand.
reference point for the earlier conversation.
I'm just giving you a hard time. Don't pay attention.
In our lingo, which is not just our lingo, it's the lingo of preservation in general. We have a strict standard on certain things and a lenient on others. Just about everything about this building is a strict standard. But I'll ask the other commissioners, but this extension, probably 40s, probably on a rear, would end up being, we have some flexibility. Anything on the front, as you've noticed, any discussion of windows or doors or trim on the front of this building would be strict. Our review would be strict.
And if someone wants to say I'm totally off base, please do.
No,
I do not mind.
Tim.
Yes, Will.
Will's going to say I'm off base.
I'm going to say that I think that your point is very well made and well taken, but I think that's an ugly box, and I'm prepared to be liberal in my judgment.
Okay. Lenient. Liberal is beyond lenient.
No, I'm not saying I'm going to be lenient, just liberal.
Okay. All right. Anything else you'd like that we haven't covered? I've taken some notes here that I'll summarize briefly. Any other comments from commissioners before I do that, or John?
I would just like to mention that I believe, doing this from memory, I think the 28th is the deadline for the next HPC public hearing submittal. So I would encourage you, if you can, to submit and for that public hearing, and then, if necessary, revise. If you're not ready to fully submit, consider submitting formally and then adding revisions. There's time to do it, but we definitely want to get you reviewed.
Yeah, that'll be the 20th of July for the September meeting, because we do not meet in August.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And just in general, I would recommend just as you did tonight, you skipped around, but just a short presentation, zeroing in on the exact changes would help move it forward. So we've just in summary, then we've talked about renovations to the first floor of this building, including changes to the driveway itself and the paving material. It doesn't seem like it's going to be widened in order to accommodate paving to the property line.
I think the plan is to actually, right now there's a planter strip that borders the fence.
Okay.
Plan is to demolish the existing pavement that comprises the driveway.
Looks like concrete.
Yes.
And
then-
replace that with paving materials.
Exactly, repave it with standard grade or whatever appropriate grade of concrete. And then, of course, the strip would be paved as well, which would give the appropriate width for ADA access.
Right, so all of those paving materials will be subject to our guidelines, the landscape guidelines C1 through C10.
Yeah, and just to clarify that, we're proposing replacing the concrete with concrete, where it's an in-kind replacement. That's the proposal.
That's fine. We will be evaluating it against our guidelines regarding historic materials and replacement in kind. And it would be helpful if you find other concrete driveways in the neighborhood. Because what we do, we look in the neighborhood for other existing materials. It is in kind, so we understand that, and we'll take that in consideration. I just off the topic, do you need to comply with any city of Baltimore or rules regarding pervious surfaces or acknowledgement of drainage?
Well, so for the city of Baltimore, this property is very unusual for us in that it's outside of the city's normal jurisdiction.
Right.
We don't have any internal requirements that speak to that. On my understanding, and Nate, I believe you may have more information, that we did do a study in terms of this. Yeah, you're pulling it up now. And to make sure that we're compliant with the city of Annapolis's.
Yeah, well, it might be something to, it's not within our, we look at the design and aesthetics, but our environmental department, deputy mayor will be looking at this, and I would recommend you look at alternatives if you can.
Okay.
This is a recommendation, but just to pave it with replacement in kind might not be just a recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
But so that's one aspect of the application that we're seeing. We're looking at a rear door change, which appears to be on several rear doors, at least two, that you're proposing that are all wood and compliant with our guidelines in terms of wood and non plastic vinyl materials, so that it looks to be feasible. The fencing is out of scope, right? You are not changing the fencing?
The wrought iron fencing in the front, we are not. The wood fencing in the back, we are replacing in kind.
But you are replacing that, and that fencing also, there's a guideline regarding it. It looks like it's butted against each other, as opposed to like what we call good neighbor fencing, which is consistent with other areas in the neighborhood. Okay, that's existing.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is that from your property?
Yes.
And you're replacing that in kind?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a beautiful fence.
Well, it is. Well, of course, from the external property side, that's what our guidelines talk about. Is the external it's slatted, and that's consistent. You talked about the fire department connection and sign on the street side, which we understand exists, and that's a requirement. One thing I forgot to talk about was the penetrations for the vents. And that involves a destruction of some historic masonry, so that should be minimized. I'm looking for it now. Thank you.
Sorry, 1 moment.
I think there were 3 vents, and they were relatively small in size.
Yep, correct.
So
Yeah, they're 12 by 8, so they're just they're sized to just take out 3 rows of brick and 12-inch.
And so will eventually the condition will come that you ask that they be that they be set within the masonry framework. And it looks like it's two masonry and one up on the shingles. So that's another thing. Penetration or destruction of any kind of historic property is another one of our guidelines. And then the final thing was light fixtures, which you presented, which we'll be talking about, and they look feasible. Anyone have any issues with those? But there is a specific guideline for those. So those were the five. This, like many of our projects, we touch on many guidelines. So this one does. So did I, other commissioners or anyone, did I miss any feedback there? Okay, seeing no motion in the chamber. So did we provide you with feedback, gentlemen, that you can use? And
thank you. And Nate, did you have any questions?
I did not, no.
Clear on all the feedback from the commission?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
So in summary, we'll provide some feedback, but this seems to be a feasible application.
Wonderful, thank you. And I might add, it's always a pleasure working with Mr. Tower.
Well, thank you, Jackson.
You're very lucky to have him as a staff member.
We agree.
Thank you.
We agree. He'll guide you well. All right. And then last on the agenda here is any administrative business that we need to take care of this evening. I only have one. I have no information, no new news, but John's doing a great job in terms of enforcing the guidelines which we put in place for outdoor furniture and fixtures. As I say in almost every meeting, they are in effect and enforceable. And our role in advancing the concept that we as a commission put forth new rules and regulations and they go into effect. It seems to be working. There's been multiple city council meetings that have passed according to the code. And so they continue to be in effect. So I'm not going to poke it. It seems like that is in effect. So someday I will propose that they tighten this whole process up so that we get an acknowledgement of some sort by city council that is definitive, but we're not. So right now we're fine. But I think at some point it would make sense to tighten this rule up so that we have some closure, which I feel still that isn't quite there. So, but John's doing a great job. Downtown looks much better.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So it's, but let me tell you, there are daily, just daily issues. It's amazing. Anyway.
The only other thing I'll talk a bit about is to acknowledge that Karen Brown is now the head of, is the CEO of Historic Annapolis, and we have a great relationship with her, and she's been active. She's a former commissioner, and will always be an open door for us as we have any other discussions. We'll probably, we may or may not. John, what are the viewpoints for an administrative meeting in late July here? Anything? Any pre-apps?
Well,
we have no administrative business.
Right. And we do have one applicant who has spoken to me about presenting, possibly two. And I would not call them major projects. So I can confirm so that we don't have to hold the date if they're not coming forward. But I think we may have two. And There is something that I would like to talk about for guidelines that relates to guidelines. And I think that this is something that is going to come up more frequently, and that is antennas. Antennas and transmission equipment for cellular devices and communications in general. And we have currently, or I have 2 administrative applications that are that I'm working with the applicant, but I don't know that I've mentioned this before. One application is to modify and enlarge an antenna that is mounted on the face of a building on State Circle, the new building on State Circle. And I met with the applicants, 5 of them, and they gave.
I'm sorry, John, to interrupt. New building, which building?
The new infill building for the building that burned down is actually a Main Street address. It's the one that has the parking entrance from State Circle.
Oh, you mean the old Bank of America?
No, it's the
one that has the
State Circle.
underground
I'm sorry,
Right.
State Circle.
Right.
I'm thinking of Church
Yeah.
Circle.
The one just
Gotcha,
up
the backside.
just
Right.
before Francis.
So there's actually an antenna mounted on the front of that building, which is not approved. And I told them that. I said, this is not approved. This would never be approved. They gave a section 106 report that I had to, let's say, give them a different perspective on. They said, well, the section 106 report says that this will have,
Who
that
owns the
mounting a
building?
larger antenna on the face of this building would have no effect on the streetscape or the cultural resource. And I said, well, look at the antenna on that building because we're meeting on site. And I said, and look at that window in the State House. Now that window has a direct sight line to the antenna, and that is the room that George Washington designed his commission in. So how could
who
it
owns this
not?
building, John?
I don't. It's a condominium association. My point is, these things are coming up again and again, and it would be just so great to have a
better
guideline that was more specific, because they're everywhere, and some of these are getting installed without approval. And we have winners in this and losers. And if you look at the top of the Annapolis Waterfront Hotel, there are antennas everywhere and more proposed.
John?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with another municipality that has similar ordinances that have addressed this, that could be a model for us to consider?
I haven't researched it, but I realize we're at a tipping point now. And when I spoke to, because so much of this communication equipment is, it has to be direct line of sight to the device. And so they're trying to put them everywhere.
Didn't the Congress, in a mistaken move, essentially grant blanket approval to all of these kind of communication devices, irregardless or regardless of local laws?
Well, there is a condition that if I don't, or the municipality does not respond to the application within 60 days, it is a de facto approval.
Yeah, but
so I've got to stay on my toes here.
Yeah, no, I share your concern. I think you're spot on, and I would like to know how
Because they have to make the application.
address this.
Well, there's a little dancing around the application also. So and apparently this is a very lucrative thing.
Of course.
There's a couple companies out there, one of which I've worked with, who makes disguises for these things, to the point that there's multiple around that you just don't see because of them. There's a bunch right on top of the Naval Academy skyboxes that have a screen around them. The screen is made specifically to allow this equipment to function without being seen. The same company has done, I think they did a clock tower in Disney that's all antennas. Have done other areas that are historic, I understand. I'll see if I can get you the information so you can take a look at that.
Thank you.
They are camouflage experts.
Can you share that with all of us?
I'm sorry?
Can you share that with all of us?
I will. It's going to take me a bit to hunt it up. It's been a couple years, but.
Yeah, our guidelines, back to John's point, D29 is our only little thing we can hang on. Placement of utility service locations, wires, piping should be inobtrusive locations. It doesn't say they should be screened, which is kind of what we're talking about, is improving our guidelines on screening.
Yeah. Well, you're making them inextrude, whatever you said.
Right.
When you put the screen up, they become.
But we should, our wording should be more specifically, should be screened.
Well, it should also include antennas as opposed to
Correct.
just utilities.
Correct. Yeah.
And there are many more that in the district and have ever been approved.
We have a little bit of experience both inside of St. Anne's and St. Mary's have cell phones towers. And St. Anne's worked with us very well.
Yeah.
And the materials that are used on those louvers were designed so that the cell could work inside that tower.
Mm-hmm.
But they are obviously not wood. They are not man-made materials. So we had to kind of be flexible with our guidelines. They're some sort of man-made material, but it enabled that tower to be in there.
But 75 or 100 feet up, you can't tell.
And we made them store the old ones. The old ones are stored so that they can be reused again once those cell towers aren't there.
Yeah, exactly. But John raises a very important point for clutter on rooftops and enforcement of clutter on top of the Annapolis Hotel is one. And John, we had a long discussion last time about clutter on top of 110 Compromise Street, and that was supposed to be screened.
Which is now open and operating.
Yes, to great excitement. We're thrilled. Of course, all of us want it to be activated. But John, have you had any discussions about complying with the original design?
Well, I've spoken to Leo, and he and I will revisit that. And
just a simple question. Do they acknowledge that the as-built is not as designed or approved?
Let me see. Was there acknowledgement? I don't think there was acknowledgement. I think there is acknowledgement that something has to be done to improve its appearance.
Okay.
Tim, what can you specify what your point of concern is so that we can all check it out?
Well, number one, the original design had rooftop units that were screened. There were screens designed there. And number two, the height of the units was lower than the existing. There's a hood that goes directly it's higher than was approved. So there is visual on top of the roof. I'm thrilled that they're open in this space, but we just have to, when we approve something and it's not built as designed or approved, they need to, either there needs to be acknowledgement and agreement that, okay, it's okay after the fact, or they need to change and go back to what was designed. Any homeowner would have to do this, honestly. So,
right. So I'll stay focused on that.
So they got a conditional use permit to open. They have a whole list of things that they have 30 days to correct. I don't know if that was on the list, John, but you might want to touch base with Lisa Minker, because I think about, the status, if they have something additional that's not in compliance, that really part of the whole conditional process.
I will.
Have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I initially went down there with Lisa. So
right.
I've actually walked through with Lisa, gone over some of these issues.
They have
Yeah.
30 days to, to bring themselves into compliance with all the things that they still have to do. I think it was a whole page of stuff.
Yeah, I kind of bring this up, and John, you brought the point up of antennas and visual clutter on rooftops. Antennas are one thing, but also HVAC equipment that's out of compliance. And so it's the same concept of view sheds, this view shed particularly looking back from one side of City Dock across the harbor, the top of the Annapolis Hotel and the top of are not what we would like to see in terms of clutter on a rooftop. And that's part of our guidelines. So visual clutter is where we're coming from here. And that's one thing. The other second is when you say you're going to design something and to comply with our guidelines, and then you don't build it that way, it's something that action should follow.
So Tim, to go back to the topic about guidelines in historic cities for various outside stuff like this, and I'm looking right now at something that they did in Wilmington, North Carolina in 2019, where they had guidelines for security equipment, telecommunications equipment, and automated teller machines. But they did a whole lot of research, and they talk about it in this paper. They actually looked at many cities and found that very few of these cities, they looked at what they call benchmark cities and non-benchmark cities, including Annapolis, Baltimore, Savannah, et cetera. And then they have developed some design guidelines to deal with these seems like security cameras, security equipment, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I think that, that's something you all might want to consider thinking about.
Well, I'm going to be immersed in this for the next 6 days.
Yeah.
Which
well,
I'm
you
looking
may come
forward
back
to.
with some really good stuff, that other jurisdictions have done.
There's several things you've given me good input to engage. What we really are looking for is we're not reinventing the wheel. We are not first to deal with this. So
right.
I'll look for this. Sorry, losing my voice. Okay.
I think this was also a topic that came up when this, adopted this whole, we're putting all of this equipment up on telephone poles and other poles in the street.
Right, exactly.
And
the
one
5G thing.
Right, the 5G. And Sally had worked on that. And there's a whole set of guidelines on those. But part of the background research for that was that there were, and I don't know if this ever got incorporated into what's done, but that there were in the historic areas of cities additional requirements that they had placed on the equipment if it was going to be located in the historic part of the city.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you brought that up. We should go back and look at the wording, because the wording of
Right.
sticking on something on top of a telephone pole and the wording on sticking on something on top of a building
yeah, they're getting ready to
should
do
be
the first.
consistent.
Right. The first ones of those apparently are proposed to go in at Westgate Circle. That's their the very
Mhm.
first. I think they just recently, the council's recently approved the lease agreements for that. It'll be interesting to see what the reaction is to the installations.
The 5G towers.
Mhm.
There's one in King George, I thought, as well, on that side.
I think under the new guidelines, these ones on Westgate were the
All right.
ones. So
Well, the wording should be consistent. It's the same issue, visual clutter
Right.
up in the air.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, right.
And we need to put some teeth in it too. It's just so that applicants understand from the get-go that there are requirements that they're going to have to meet. I mean, I think with one applicant, I'm into 50 emails.
And
John,
again,
we all know you love that thing where you can get into those
50 email,
relationships,
yeah.
those email relationships.
Well, when you say teeth into it, enforcement is what you're implying. But I think, John, what I liked what Worsley about saying, it needs to be clear so you can say this is allowable and this is not.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we should formulate these guidelines now before we reach a tipping point.
Okay. In the fall, we'll talk about guidelines in general because that's one of the things I frankly believe our guidelines need to become a big overhaul, and I'd like to start all of us thinking about finding. We need an external expert. My proposal would be we need to find grant funding to help us rewrite our guidelines. We shouldn't be doing it ourselves, but the standard for doing guidelines over and over again is you get a pro. So John, I'll talk to you later. I'm kind of hitting you out of the blue on this, but grants monies, I believe grants are available for this. This would be one obvious item to add. So that's the fall. Maybe that's the next year, the next whole year.
But you can also ask for money in the budget, in the comprehensive planning budget for that.
Yeah, we should. It's valid.
Yeah, I think
Well,
that they're.
first we have to. You're right. I completely. This is totally something. You're right, Jackie. We shouldn't shy away from asking money and getting the aldermen on our side for this.
Right.
Okay. Other administrative business. All right. Then would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Good
All right.
discussions.
Thank
I
you
really,
all.
really appreciate all your time and effort.
Good meeting.
Goodbye,
Thank you.
all.
Take
See ya.
care. We'll keep in